All right, so here we are live and in compact. I don't know, but we're here with my friend Cliff. Cliff, introduce yourself.
Hi there, I'm Cliff Schadt. I've been friends with this guy for, going on 20 years now, and we've kind of spent a lot of time sharing a lot of ideas and stuff over the years. I do similar things as Brett. I do a lot of clinics and custom colt startings all over the country, as well as having a pretty busy training barn back in Ocala, Florida. Try to get out on the road as much as I can, and that's pretty much it.
Before I get into what I want to talk about, I want to share something about you because I think a lot of people don't realize that you don't have to be born into this, and you and Dave
Ratchford,
are the two best examples I've got.
Yeah.
So you were born and raised in
Long Island, New York.
Long Island, New York.
Hunter jumper family. I'm a second generation horseman out of a hunter jumper family. Pretty well respected. My uncle's a judge and a trainer on the West Coast, and he's left his mark on the industry and still continues to do so into his 60s. So yeah, and my mom as well, and my brother. And
right.
Yep.
Right. But your dad's a carpenter, right?
My dad's a carpenter.
So like you were.
Yeah.
I mean, you had the horse influence, but we're totally not born into it. And you ran away from home.
Yeah, I kind of ran away from home. I told my parents I was done going to school, and if they wanted me to have any kind of finish to it, that I would homeschool my last few years. Be honest, I got the books. I got the answer key. I just filled everything out, made sure I got enough wrong to make them think I wasn't a genius, and I went on with it. And which is ironic today because I didn't go to college. I barely graduated high school, and now I teach at colleges. I go and teach colt starting, clinics and seminars, as well as having college kids from multiple different colleges from all over the country come to me. And, to get their final grade, they've got to do an internship with me, which I just think is ironic. It's kind of neat.
And when you left home, you went straight to work for Maynard, right?
No, actually, this was back in the kind of the lawless Wild West days of the internet, back before people really uploaded pictures or anything. Everything was just a message board.
Right.
And I went on to some site that said that they had equestrian jobs and this and that, and I went on there and I found a job with Keith Kitchen, cutting horse trainer out in Tumalo, Oregon, and I went out there, went to work for him, and he was tough, man. He was good at what he did, and I learned a lot from him, and I still utilize a lot of what I took away. But the biggest thing I learned is just shut your mouth and work and do what you need to do. And I did that for a while, but my goal at that time wasn't to be an arena trainer. I wanted a cowboy. That's why I came out west. So that was I stayed there for a few months, and that was a vehicle to get me to a place where I could actually meet some people and network a little bit. And I left there and I went to work for Maynard Alves, and the West will remember Maynard in a lot of ways, but I remember Maynard he was a really good man to a kid that came a long way from a background that had nothing to do with it, and he gave me an opportunity to get on more colts in the year or so that I was there. I think I put my leg over more colts, and a lot of people get on in a lifetime.
In their whole life.
Every 2 weeks, we ran in another dozen. There were 4 guys, and every 2 to 3 weeks, we'd run in a dozen head each and roll through them, and then run in another bunch. And I mean, that was, you can't pay for that kind of education. Absolutely. And I was getting paid for it.
And then I remember Maynard different than you did. Because I was born there and you knew me and blah, blah, blah. And so I remember Maynard as an old hard ass and tough to get along with.
Yep. And he was every bit of that. He was cranky,
and his horses
angry.
were tough.
They were good. Whoever told him that breeding halter and pleasure horses to cutting horse studs was a good idea. I don't know, because they were both watchy and bucky like a cutter, and they wanted to fall down and flip over like the others. So it was an interesting mix.
And so, like I say, I remember Maynard differently, but I did appreciate like what he did for the industry was good.
Yeah. And he gave a lot of guys like myself chances.
Gave a bunch of guys,
man, and that's why I do it today. Right. That's why I drag these kids around with me, because
And he did what you do is he set kids up for success.
Yeah.
He helped them out.
Yeah.
If nothing else, like I said, I remember he was an old hard ass, but he
you
always
know-
had a couple $100 in his pocket. He wasn't afraid to give it to you.
Nope.
And
Nope. If he knew we were going to rodeo or something, he'd cuss you for taking the day off, but then last minute he'd pay your entry fees.
yeah, or
So he
fuel
was.
or whatever.
Yep.
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 He was a pretty cool guy.
He's a pretty neat guy. He loved being a cowboy, and he was a direct line. He grew up around Tony Amaral and
Right.
those guys, and for me, that's as close as I ever got to getting some of that kind of knowledge. And I learned things there that I continue to use this day, and it really shaped a lot of what I do today. And Maynard was a good man to me.
So since we're on the West Coast anyway, we're talking about Maynard Alves and Tony Amaral. So earlier today we went and got some hay. We were on a hay getting mission.
Yep.
And we got talking about Gary LeFew and some of the stuff we were talking about there.
Psycho-cybernetics.
Yeah, exactly. And how we use that on horses, I thought was really interesting. So for the viewers, this is a real quick rundown. Gary LeFew was world champion bull rider in 73 or 76.
Had the hottest rookie year of anybody, I think, up to that point. Yeah, and then he fell off real bad after that. Like his next couple of years were not good years for him.
But in his hot year, everything he got on bucked.
Yep.
And bulls that didn't buck bucked for him. He won money everywhere he went, and it was all the way he thought. And so after his relatively short rodeo career, he had still has a really long career teaching people.
Yes. Continues to.
Not how to ride, but how to think.
Yep.
And he's also done a bunch of TV shows, and he's done a bunch of all kinds of stuff.
How to control your emotions is a big part of it.
Exactly. And so he was a real big part of my childhood. We were talking about it earlier, and so let's talk about what you were saying about controlling your emotions and with colts, and because I thought that was some pretty cool stuff.
So I think there's a couple, as you peel back that onion, so to speak, there's a couple facets to that. The first part is you're not going to get much done in life or with horses if you can't control your emotions. If you don't know how to compartmentalize things and not take everything personally, which I think is a really hard thing these days because we live in a time of hurt feelings. Everybody's offended by something. And I think that part of that is learning how to control that, not take things personally, you've got to embrace your adrenaline to a certain extent, but you can't let that control you either. You can't get on the muscle. You can't let it get you mad or aggressive. And, that's something that has been important to me for a long time, especially I grew up, I'm part Cuban, I'm Italian and German Irish, and I'm wired to get mad.
Yeah.
I'm wired to get mad. And there's sometimes I struggle
I've known
with
you
it.
for a long time. I know you
I
do.
struggle with it, but I've learned to totally cut that out of the horses because it just wasn't doing me any good.
Well, and that's the thing is that we can have our professional life and the rest of our life.
Yep.
And again, we've known each other for a long time, so I also fly off the handle.
Oh yeah.
And just get that's all right. And just get dumb.
Yep.
Personally, but professionally, I always have control over everything.
Absolutely.
And that's what those young horses need.
Yeah.
They need somebody to. What we were talking about is when you were saying that they'll build their emotion up to try to find where you are, and when they find that there's nothing to bounce it off of, they just go
kind of come back. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. And that's, I think, the first step to teaching. Ideally, we want to teach these horses. I think for a long time, people worked on getting the horse to look to the human for the answers, but that meant that if the human was fallible, if the human fell apart a little, or the human wasn't there, or whatever, the horse would then fall apart because he was hooked onto the human the same way he's hooked onto the other horses. So the horse was actually, if he didn't have the right human on his back and he encountered a tough situation, that horse would kind of melt down because the human was melting down. But the kind of lane that we're going down now with these horses is teaching them how to get out of that sympathetic mindset, that sympathetic emotional state to the parasympathetic, where rather than looking to other horses or looking to the human for the answers, they're looking into themselves. And, like I've got a great horse that really, he's been the best advertisement for that when I explain this to people, because some people look at you like you're crazy. It's hard to wrap their mind around it. But then I show him my horse and what he does with pressure and what he does under fire. And he's just, he's like a special forces soldier. He's like an Army Ranger. The hotter it gets, the cooler he becomes. Right. And the more he's just in the zone. And it's unbelievable to me that what people call a prey animal can get to that state, which kind of undoes maybe that mindset that horses are such a prey animal and maybe they're more somewhere in the middle. I think they have.
Well, my stance on that.
I think there's prey animal characteristics there, but at the same time, being that they're closer to the top of the food chain, because there's not a lot of things that can kill a full-grown horse in where we find horses. They develop a little bit differently than, say, a deer or a rabbit or something like that. Right. There's a little bit different mindset there, and I think that we're playing on that. We're building up the side of it that the horse is able to have an immense amount of confidence if we just show them how to be confident.
Exactly.
And we don't get there by cramming a whole bunch of stuff on them all at once and saying, here, take this, take this, take this. But just like coming back to the psycho of cybernetics, if I can flag and get one step, and I can get that one step 3 times in a row, that's more than getting 20 steps otherwise, because pretty soon I'm giving a less flag and more step, and the horse is getting connected. And that's all we're after is connection.
And eventually that builds up into, when we were having this conversation earlier, just as we pulled on the county road, I said that's the definitive answer for what is a broke horse, is one that does its work without you. And so, and we talked about this too. Like, a lot of people will say, well, I don't ever want my horse to ignore me.
Yeah.
Well, I want my horse to know his job so well that he will do his job without me.
Yes.
And then we got into a bunch of conversations about, well, this horse did this and this horse did this, and then he came over and did that, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
But like, whether you're snubbing a colt or going down the fence or roping a cow or whatever, I want that sucker to not care about my emotions.
Right.
Because that's an emotionally difficult time for a human.
Absolutely.
And recently there was a picture of you and Ashley. She was snubbing, you were on the colt, and that sucker was rearing up.
He had his legs over Tap's neck.
Right.
Yeah.
And it was a big warm blood horse. And Tap's what, 14-2?
14-2 on a good day.
Yeah, he's 11-50 maybe.
Yeah.
And that colt was way bigger than him. And so, obviously, both of you guys know your business and whatever, but there was some emotional freaking out on both of your sides. Yeah. And Tap was just like, I got it.
Yeah, I was laughing hysterically, because that's what I do when I get a little nervous, is I just laugh. That's my go-to. And Ashley just had this look because there's feet in front of her and this horse is in the saddle with her, and she's just trying her best to stay calm there and do the right thing. And that horse, no change in him. Yeah. You can watch the whole video. He never changed. He just, if anything, he slowed down and he got methodical about getting himself out of it, and it was pretty amazing.
And that was another thing that we were talking about, and you already said it, but the more pressure you put on that horse, the more he focuses.
Yeah.
Which is kind of a strange deal, because that's not what we're taught about horses. Yeah. We're taught that horses are different than that.
I gotta give credit. You know me, I always try to credit. I'll never say that someone else's idea is my own. And so I give the credit there to Martin Black and what he's really shown me about really kind of rewiring these horses' brains and getting them, by taking them and increasing the pressure and increasing their level of excitement or even agitation at times, and holding them in that. And instead of retreating as soon as the horse becomes a little excited or a little wound up, you kind of can hold them up there for a minute, and then you help them come back down to earth. And then you take them up again and you help them come back again. And pretty soon it becomes no big deal for that horse to to get into the heat, into the fire, but also he knows always how to come back.
Well, you mentioned special forces earlier, and that's exactly how they teach.
Yep. And Martin
forces.
actually calls his horses special forces horses.
Well, and like his deal with, I don't know if he still does this.
Yep.
I haven't talked to Martin in a long time, but his deal with that triangle pen where
Yes.
it's cow, and
Yep,
so
he
it's,
does.
the closer he gets,
Yep.
the more pressure there is. But that's how special forces also train SEALs.
Yeah.
Is you stress somebody
Yes.
to the point that they can't take it anymore, and
Yep.
then you hold it there,
Yep.
and then you let them down softly.
Exactly.
To the point where then eventually, like, stress is not a big deal.
It's not a
to
big
them.
deal. Yeah. And that's the thing is that
I think that's what we do with show horses.
too many people try to protect their horses from stress, and this is where exposure trumps training every time. Is that the more, and that's why ranch horses are generally so reliable, is because ranch horses get thrown in the fire all the time, whether they're ready or not. But if there's a good hand on board, he's going to support. I mean, he needs that horse for the rest of the day. He can't just toss him aside because that horse is having a tough time. So a good hand is going to help that horse to always come back, and he's going to reassure him. He's going to build the confidence when he can. And so those horses do learn how to be what I call emotionally elastic.
Oh, nice! I like
Emotional elasticity.
that.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the people trying to protect their horses from stress. So I see that a lot, and there's obviously some good reasons why we should protect ourselves from stress. There's
absolutely.
some good reasons why we should protect our horses from stress. It's got to do with our guts and yada yada yada.
Of course.
But there's also some great reasons, and this is something you and I have talked about a bunch, especially with these young people that we help, trying to stress them.
Yes.
And that's something that I think a lot of horse people don't.
Strength doesn't come about from the absence of stress. Strength comes about from learning how to handle the stress, and you can't learn it unless you're in it.
And so it like in the cowboy world, you get a horse where it's a pretty good team roping horse, and then you go, well, he's got to go breathe some diesel smoke now.
Yeah.
He's got to go down the road.
Go down the road.
And so that's what you guys are doing with I assume this is a Grand Prix
Prospect.
prospect.
Ash,
Huh?
your stud is a Grand Prix prospect.
Yeah, for sure.
And so that's what we're doing with him. We're just, because like this trip doesn't matter.
Just
Yeah.
getting life.
Just breathing
breathing
diesel and
smoke and just going down the road and being parked somewhere else, just stressing him, stressing
and
stressing.
and as a stud, he's loaded in the stock trailer right next to everything else. He doesn't have his own stud stall or anything else. And
if he doesn't make it, cut his nuts out. No big deal.
Exactly.
Well, and that was the big thing of like this trip was kind of like we're gonna see because he's never really gone anywhere but our farm at home and our farm in Ocala, and he's always been really good, but he's also never really been tested.
Right.
He's never really gone anywhere. He's never really gone down the road or had to walk into a new place with new horses and new situation and smells and mares and everything else to see how he'd
Pony's backing up to his stall.
Yeah.
So that's the kind of stuff that I think most horse owners, I know you do, and I do. I go out of my way to find ways to do it. These yearlings, I've got all these yearlings out here. At some point, I'm going to load them all in the trailer and go to Walmart.
Yeah. Exactly.
I got to go to Walmart anyway.
Anyway, bring him.
Yeah.
Yep.
And just get them bar broke. And I think that's a thing that people don't think about. Like, if you need this son of a gun to be good here at home, at the club, at the arena, at the whatever, well, you got to stress him.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I go as a young horse guy, that's kind of my lifelong thing. I go to a lot of these barns, and when I get to a barn and there's no kids, no dogs, no chickens around, I always say it's going to be a long day because these horses are going to be so reactive and they're going to be so touchy about everything because the human, and I'm not talking bad on anybody, they're doing what they think is best for these horses, but they're sterilizing the area to a point that when they do go to town, they're stuffing their ears with balls and stuff to minimize the sound because the horse doesn't get that at home. And I guess to a certain degree, it's almost fair to the horse to do that because if you're not going to give him any of that at home, he's going to have a mental breakdown when he gets to town. Yeah. But if you've got a bunch of kids running around and dogs and everything else, those horses are getting incremental portions of that every day, so that when they do get to town, they at least have something to fall back on to
roll
say,
back on,
I'm
yeah.
kind of okay with this. Yeah.
Well, like that horse we started, was that in Virginia?
Yeah.
At
Trey's,
Trey's place.
Yeah.
That's what that horse was. There was
Yep.
nothing
Nothing
wrong with that horse. She just hadn't ever.
Just every time she pinned her ears or gestured at
Somebody
anything,
backed
everybody would take the pressure away. And she got pretty good at manipulating people.
Right. She trained the trainers.
Exactly.
And so we took her and we didn't even have to manhandle her very
No,
much.
no. It was
If I recall, we didn't even.
it was just going forward regardless of what her opinion was at that moment, and we just waited for her to have a new opinion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And boom, worked great.
Exactly.
And it was just a matter of not caring about. And there's another deal that we were talking about earlier. I think it's really important to not care about what the result is.
Yeah. Yep.
Like we need a result.
Yeah.
Especially, I think in life and raising children and relationships and everything else, but with young horses in particular, we need to go at it with, I'm going to get a result, and I'm not all that worried about what the result is. If it's a result I don't like, I'll change my tactics.
Right. And we both know Frank Barnett, right? So Frank Barnett talks, and for those that don't know, Frank he's one of the last old timers out there that are really, he's on another level. He's the man. And but Frank was telling me, and he even has a sign hanging up on his barn. He calls it the laboratory, because he said nothing is the same case to case. It's all an experiment.
Right.
And he said you apply a little of this, you throw in a little of that, and you see what you get. And if you like what you get, then maybe you try to recreate that. But he said every horse is an individual, so everything is really just an experiment at the end of the day.
Add a little more salt.
Yep.
It's too salty. Put
Exactly.
a little more water in it.
Exactly.
I have a good quote on that, not being attached to the outcome. Do you know Deepak Chopra? 7 Spiritual Laws.
I know the word.
So it's a really skinny little book. It's 7 spiritual laws for like happiness and fulfillment in your life. And one of them is you have to let go of your attachment to your perceived outcome. And I love that.
Yeah.
That's exactly what
Your
you're saying.
attachment to your perceived outcome. Yeah, that is what I'm trying to say.
It's a life health book, right?
Yeah.
It's like
Yeah, that-
not life, but it applies so much.
I think the other, and I've been working with a couple of young guys on this over the past several months. It's been a common theme, is that like we have to remember, especially on these young horses, that they're babies. They're like little children, right? This is kindergarten. We have to have the expectation that they're going to do it wrong.
Yeah.
And we're not failing. They're going to make the mistakes, and we have to allow them to make the mistake almost without judgment. Because like as long as we continually reward and release on the good stuff, whatever they do before that is on them. Like if they're running into the pressure and they're making the wrong decision, that's on them, and it's okay. As long as we're not increasing the pressure to punish them for making the mistake.
When you said this is not a pass or fail deal,
Right.
with the first saddling on a
yep.
colt, but that's all, folks. No,
We were talking about not being a passive fail.
yeah, when we said, I don't even remember what the colt was, but whether it bucks around or not, I don't think it did, if I recall. But you were saying this isn't a pass or fail deal. Like, we don't care what happens.
Yeah, he can express himself however he wants.
Exactly. And that really hit me hard. And I mean, I've always felt that way, but I never expressed it. And I've taken that and run with it.
Yeah.
And through all of it, just like you're saying with these young horses, this isn't pass or fail.
Yeah.
I expect you to probably do it wrong.
Yeah.
I'm going to show you how to do it. And then I expect you to probably do it wrong. And then I'm going to show you again. And then when you finally do it right, I'm going to scratch you on the neck.
Exactly.
And then we're done.
Yeah. So like I've learned, I used to try to prevent them from making the mistakes or doing it the wrong way. And I try to set it up so that they could only do it the right way.
I did too.
And they weren't learning as much as if they explored the wrong ways to do it. And I just stayed the same. I just stayed status quo. I stayed, whatever level of pressure I was at, wherever I was at emotionally, I stayed there. And I let the horse explore. Well, you can run to the end of that rope over here. You can run over there. But the only way you're getting off that pressure is when you come and face up to me and let me loosen that rope or whatever. And let me tell you, those horses, the more you allow them to make every possible mistake before they find the right way, the more in love with the right way they are when they finally find it. They are committed to it because they're like, there's nothing for me over there.
Yeah.
But if you keep them from going over there because it's wrong, the horse wants to go over there because he thinks that maybe there's something for him there. The horse they're so honest in what they do. They've got to explore it for themselves to understand that, oh, that doesn't work. And then they're going to be so much more willing to talk peace with you over here.
Precisely. It's probably about the same time period in our life because we're about the same age. You know, I was a master of getting one to turn around fast.
Yeah.
When I'm still really good at it because my time is good and everything like that. But I could take one with 10 or 12 rides and get them turn around so fast they get dizzy.
Yep.
But the way I did it was I captured them with my snaffle bit and I captured them with my body.
Give them only one word.
And then I just pushed
Open the door and push.
Yeah, I was just
shove them through.
The only way away from this pressure, which was me spurring them in the guts really hard.
Yeah, we all
to
done
go
it.
over there and you can't go forward.
Yep.
You got to just keep. And so like, I was good at it. And like, one with 10 or 12 rides, I could ride them in a sail ring, and just. And they'd get so dizzy they just dang near fall down, and I'd let them kind of find the world again, and then the other way. And boy, they bit up
wild.
But nobody else could even turn them right or left because, just like you said,
they didn't have your timing and feel for it.
Well, they didn't have my timing and feel for it, but I'd only shown them one answer. Here's the question. Here's the answer. They didn't have any idea that they could go forward, left,
so if
right.
you didn't capture them enough, if you didn't spur hard enough, they weren't going to do it.
If you didn't have my time and feel, you couldn't do it.
Yep.
And so, you know, I did it for a long time because it was lucrative.
Yeah.
But it's not good.
No.
And so my horses turn around a lot slower now, and it takes a lot longer to get them to turn around and blah, blah, blah.
But they're correct. They're
but
content.
they do it correctly.
They're not afraid.
Exactly. They don't bang their
things
legs.
that matter in the long term.
Right.
Yeah.
But it's all just exactly what you said. Is just letting them, anymore. I don't care if you step forward a little bit. Specifically in the turning around part, if you step forward a little bit, if you brace a little bit, if you move, no, that's wrong. No, that's wrong. No, that's wrong. No, that's wrong. And just let them find, oh, well, here's where the grace is.
Yeah. For me, I think that the paradigm shift in my horsemanship came about when I stopped building the horse for right now and I started building the horse for tomorrow. And I think
That's a beautiful thought. That's a beautiful thought.
That was when I feel like as a man, as a trainer, that's when I feel like I arrived, because I stopped saying just because I can do this right now, because believe me, riding colts long enough, you know as well as I do, we learned every trick to make them look broke. We learned every trick to cheat one. Boy, look at him neck rein. He's not neck rein, you know, and you're just quick with your hands and all that. And I think when you stopped, and really I think what it really, if we want to really get philosophical there, it's that we finally learned how to kill our ego and stop needing that dopamine and stop needing the validation for right now.
No, I think
look how handy he can ride one 5 times and got it doing all this. And now I'm like, my 5 ride colts, I just kind of let them wander around. I just guide them here and there. And I'm like, you know, it's fine.
My 5 ride colts might walk around.
Right. I don't need to lope them on the first day I get on because I was doing that for me.
Right.
That was for me. I had to lope them around on the first ride.
And if they buck, even better.
Even better. And
Especially
now I'm like, some days, and this was hard for me, and hard for me to admit because I was so drilled with, if you lope one way, you have to lope the other way. That was so hard for me, man. So hard for me. I got to tell you, I struggled with that, and I just did it this weekend. A bunch of these colts, like the last day, we took them in the big indoor arena, and it's a big indoor, and I got them. I loped a bunch of them to the left. 2 of them I didn't lope to the right because they just weren't ready to go right. It wasn't going to be good. It wasn't gonna do them any favors on the last day I was there.
And you could get them. You could trick them.
I could cheat them around. And I could have had Ashley chase them off, and we would have loped a little. And you know what? I was just like, there's no point. I'm coming back in a few months, going to put some more rides on these horses. We had a great owner with great horses that said, you leave them how you want to leave them. I won't do anything unless you tell me to with these horses.
Awesome.
Have at it. Awesome. And that's how, as a colt starter, that's how I know that I arrived, because my ego is finally, so far in the corner that I don't need to impress anybody by loping the other way because a 4-H manual said you got to lope both ways in order to have a good ride on a horse.
Exactly.
You know.
Well, and like the ego part of it, and I love your version of it. I came at it a little different. Is when I started riding horses for other people instead of for me.
Oh yeah, that's kind of the same deal. Yeah.
Same basic idea. That's where I kind of came to the same idea. But like you said, it's like there's no manual.
No.
Nobody knows how to do this.
No.
And
the ones that trumpet the loudest are usually the most far off base.
Exactly. And you and I are the first of all the oldest, the most experienced, and have swung leg on more colts than anybody else I know. The two of us are. There's maybe some others, but like we're right up there. Mm-hmm. We're in the top 10. And the fact is we're both like, yeah, whatever, it's a baby.
Yeah.
Like, who cares?
Who cares?
Just let them go around.
Yeah.
Just let them go around the pen.
I used to get so worried when the clients would come to watch, and of course they'd make a bobble that day because I'm a little tight because the clients are there. Now I don't even care. I just laugh. I say, well, today will be a great day if he doesn't buck me off. And then there's no expectations.
Right.
You know,
right.
And everything is a success after that.
I haven't had client horses in over a year, but yeah, anymore if I've got a client, I go, well, everything I told you is not going to happen today because you're here and I'm nervous, and so it's going to.
Well, I think to communicate with the horse is truly without ego. Like horses, I don't think horses have. I think some horses can be a little. I think some, a stud colt can be kind of puffed up and a little arrogant and things like that. But I think that horses just do. I think they just do what they feel like they need to do, whether it's good or bad. I don't think good or bad are.
No, yeah,
the equation.
There's no good or bad.
It's just this is how I feel in this moment. So this is how I'm going to react. And I think there's a purity in that. And maybe saying they have no ego isn't right. Maybe it's just that there's more of an honesty in the horse than what we are able to give sometimes.
On the ego thing, I've got to go with Nietzsche, and so the ego is self-awareness, and so. If we're using the literal term that Nietzsche described, I say a horse is all ego.
Yeah.
But they're not egotistical in the way that.
That's fair. Yeah.
You and I both are.
That's where I was going with that.
I think that's where you were going with it. They don't. They're totally self-aware, and they're totally thinking about themselves.
Yeah, they totally but they kind of have ownership of what they do. Like this is what I do. I don't care. This is what I do.
Yeah. They'll poop in public.
Yeah.
And, well, sometimes we won't.
Yeah. No, I think that's, But I think that, like, in order to really train a horse, you've got to separate yourself from your ego. I think that's a huge thing. At least it was for me, because it was really hard. We talked a little in the beginning and about my own journey, and I left home. I was a senior in high school. Actually, I was in my 11th grade year when I first went out. I went out to Missouri, but when you live in New York, everything is west. So Missouri was west.
Missouri's a long way.
And I went to a place. They bred about 80 mares a year, and they had a lot of colts. They owned a son of Doc's Prescription, which at the time was a pretty nice horse. And I started a lot of colts there, and it was more of an old school starting. And but I learned a lot. I got to get on a lot of horses, and it was really, really, really good for me. But, you can't help but, especially being a kid from New York, wherever I went after that, I went to these different ranches, and you can't ride, you're from New York. And it was like I had to actually get behind my ego and get into my ego in order to survive. Like, that was a survival thing. Like, if they said I couldn't, by God, I can.
Right.
And it didn't matter if it was fighting someone, getting on the worst bronc in the pen, going to a bull ride practice and just getting on as many as I could get on over everybody else there, because I had to prove to people that I was good enough.
Sure.
And I think that's a trap we sometimes fall into, and we chase that forever. But that
in
at
some
that time
sense
is important.
You and I have had this conversation before. in a sense, you kind of had to live the life.
You
a
did.
little bit.
Yep. And it didn't really matter. Like the only thing that was going to gain me any footing in that world was to be a bit egotistical and a bit
Sure.
self-centered and be like, by God, I'm better than all of you. I don't care where I was born. I can do this.
Right.
And I did it over and again and until I didn't have to anymore. And that was probably the best day, was when I finally got to the point where I was like, I don't have to be this way.
When was that? Because when we met, you were still kind of like that.
Oh, heck yeah. Heck yeah. I think that...
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's been the last, I'd say, 6 or 7 years where I saw the big change.
Yeah. I think it was a series of events in my life, maybe dating the wrong woman and doing this and doing that and just getting myself, kind of painting myself into a corner in life a little bit, where I was like, I'm not getting anywhere being hard-headed and just ramming my way through everything. I need to kind of start to listen to some things that are around me and pay better attention to maybe what's good for me instead of what I think I need or I want. And that was a turning point for me. But I think that if I were to narrow that down to a moment, it's when you come close to really kind of losing everything, and I kind of went through that. I was never married, but it was kind of like going through a divorce. I finally, after so many years out west, I got into a spot where I'd made some dumb decisions, and I had to go back home kind of with my tail between my legs and go back to riding back east again, because that's where I knew I could make money to kind of recoup and rebuild. Because, the trap of working for ranches and stuff, you're always one vehicle breakdown away from losing
transmission away from.
Yeah, you're like one big fix and you're done. And so that's kind of where I got to, and I went back east, and that was when I started saying, I want to be more than the guy that can just do a good job putting, the first 10 rides or so on. Like, I want to be. It sounds funny, but I want to be the Renaissance man in this. I want to be able to show one. I want to be able to ride one pretty. I want to be able to start them in a way that other people can ride them. And it took a while to realize that in myself, but it came along, and the quicker I picked it up, the quicker it came at me. And so leading up to like the past probably 6 or 7 years, that like I really started to say, like, I don't always like who I am, but I like who I want to be.
Right.
I started to chase that. And so, I've said it before to you, and I'll say it here just to get it on a camera, is that I set out, I wanted to set the world ablaze because I wanted to help horses and fix horses. I just didn't know that horses were going to fix me.
Right.
That was the big thing.
Yeah.
So.
And we can edit this out if it's something that's a little too close. But I noticed that 6, 7, maybe 8 years ago, you started getting closer to your family.
Mm-hmm.
And your brother specifically.
Oh, yeah.
And that's where I saw a big change in you.
My brother and I didn't have, we were buddies growing up. We did a lot of wild stuff, rode dirt bikes and did all those things, but he didn't ride as a kid. And my brother got to a place in his life, kind of like I got to several years ago, but he got to a place where, like, he felt like he was going to have a mental breakdown, work, the pressures of work. He was a young guy that ended up he built a really big business.
Huge
business, huge responsibilities. Young father, young husband, all these things, and I remember him saying, "Man, I gotta just get out of town for a little while and kind of chill out." And he came down, and I was saddling some horses. He said, "Where are you going?" I said, "Well, we're gonna go chase some cows and have a good time." I said, "Grab some beer and let's go." "Oh no, I don't want to ride." I said, "You're gonna ride." I got him to ride and loved it so much that by the end of the week, he'd bought 2 horses from me, and in a month, he bought a living quarter trailer, and he went. My brother jumped in so deep. I mean, he bought a son of Metallic Cat, a son of of one-time Pepto. He bought some of the best horses he could put his money on, and he really accelerated to becoming one of the
And he's becoming
one of the
good
top
horseman.
one of the top low number sorters in the country for a while. And I mean, and now he's training, now he's taking in young horses. But for me, that change happened because all those years, my brother, he wanted to be as far away from the horses as he could. As a kid, he wanted to be a sports guy. He wanted to just be a regular guy. He wanted to escape the horses. And so I never felt like he really looked up to me. I never felt like I had to be a role model for him. But then when he got into it, he's younger. He's 4 years younger than me. He's just way more mature and responsible than me.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, he never really needed to look to me for things. And then all of a sudden he started looking at me and asking me questions. And now I had to be held accountable to the things about myself that maybe I didn't like as much. And try and explain to him things about how to do it the right way with the horse and not get him or his horses or his kids in trouble. And that was a place that was a big change for me, because I had to, now it wasn't just me to think about, I think that I think it's real easy to just run through life like a loose horse, just kind of just running. And you don't get very introspective at that point. After a while, a lot of it kind of becomes survival, right?
Yeah.
You're just doing the best you can. And I think that with my brother coming to the sport at that point, I think in a way, I think that my brother kind of saved me there.
I saw a huge change in you there. Right about that time.
100%. 100%.
You kind of grew up.
Yeah, and it was.
And now that I know you're the older brother, it was like
make more sense.
Yeah, you kind of had to be the older brother.
And so he, as he flourished and grew, I flourished and grew, and it became. Even though my family was a hunter jumper family and I came from horses, it was so different. It was a parallel but different path than I was on. And then to have my brother kind of cross over to share that with me, it's like we as humans, we're tribal, right? So we're attracted to community, we're attracted to tribe. And I think that being able to have one of my actual blood in that with me and wanting to spend that time with me and be a part of it, it really changed my whole way of looking at things. I was like, now I need to make up horses that my niece and nephew can ride.
Right.
And to watch them, like he bought a little coming 4-year-old mare off of me that his kids learned on. And like to know that filly that I rode and brought along and done all things with was educating my niece and nephew. It was like, that's a big weight, that's better than any buckle. That's better than anything.
Sure.
Was to watch those kids kick that pony around. I was like, man, this is different now. Now it's just life as chapters. And, I think that in our younger years, we're so enamored with those hard bucking tough horses. And then there just comes a point where it's like, hey, it's okay to like the good ones now.
Yeah.
It's okay.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So our last topic here, you and I both have this love-hate relationship with colt starting competitions.
Yes.
And you do them, I don't. I think anybody watching this, I've explained why I don't. I'm too competitive to not. I'm too competitive to not cheat. And so you're one of the few guys that does it and does it on a fairly regular basis that I have any respect for, because I know that you don't cheat. You won't risk a horse for a buckle. That's the whole reason I don't do it, is because I will risk a horse for a buckle. So I just let's just kind of just unpack that and just let's go through the whole colt starting, because I know you actually feel the same way.
I do. Colt starting's not a timed event. And that being said, I think the only reason I've had pretty good success in the colt starting competitions now over the years. And I think the only reason that I've been blessed to have that success is that I don't care who my competition is, because the only one I'm competing against is myself. I just want to be better than I was yesterday. I want to see how far I can take that colt while still preserving the things that matter to that horse. And so for me, it's just a way, like, I see the colt starting competition as that's where I go to hone my knife. I go there because all eyes are on me, and I can't get out there in front of a crowd and let emotion and ego take over. I can't, because it's going to show.
Yeah.
It's going to show. It's going to show in the horse. And I've been in some of these where some hotshot guys have shown up, and boy, they're gonna win it. They're gonna do this, do that, and then by the end, their horse is just blown out, doesn't have anything left to it, and people can say, well, that's because it's a colt starting competition. No, that's just exposing who they are at home, because if they're willing to do that there, they're willing to do worse at home.
Right.
And I'll die on that hill right there. Maybe that'll offend some people, but I'm here to tell you that when I'm there, like, number one, as a rule, and I know I have buddies that can vouch for me on this, I'll always, if I can pick the horse, I'll always pick the snuffiest one in the pen. Just not because I care to win, I just want to see how well I can get by that horse with everybody watching. Because with everybody watching, I've got to be smooth. I've got to be the best version of myself. I've got to give that horse everything I can to support it through. And to be honest, the trickiest thing, the thing that everybody runs into in those competitions is that they do too much in the first couple rounds. They just round pen. They chase them around, chase them around. And they're getting those horses just so tired and blown out, which, it lets them get a bunch done in that first round. But by the final round, there's nothing left of that horse because they're babies. They're
babies.
They're children, they're doing their best, and they got their body sore, they're tired. And I try to get my hands on them, and I try to just make friends with them. And honestly, at the end of the day, and it ain't very, a lot of people have other things to say, but I'll die on the hill that one of my best mentors ever, and I'm not a card carrying member or anything, but Pat Pirelli has been a really, really huge influence on me just because he's been a good friend, and he always said to me, he said that horse doesn't much care what you do, he just cares about how you make him feel when you do it. And he said, like, you can get away with a lot of things if you just make that horse feel comfortable and you get him to like you. And I called him one day from a colt starting competition, and I said, man, Pat, there's some heavy hitters here, and what would you say to the crowd if you could say one thing to the crowd about what your objective is? And he said, I want to start a conversation that leads to a relationship and hopefully in time turns into a partnership. And man, that hit home for me. That was something that was so, it was really poignant because it was like, God dang, we miss so much of that, because sometimes we have this like subjugation. We need to subjugate them, and we need to make them so that they know we're boss, and we have to show them who's dominant. We have leadership, and there is leadership, but it's the kind of leadership that's benevolent, and it's the kind of leadership that's give and take, and we allow them to make the mistake. We allow that horse to be who they are in that moment. If that's who he needs to be, then that's who he needs to be. We're going to work with him to help him to get to the next spot. That's kind of my feeling on that.
Yeah, but that goes back into what we were talking about earlier when Hanchy asked me, how come they never buck with you? And I said, I don't care.
Exactly. I rarely ever have a horse buck with me on the first few rides.
It doesn't matter to me, so I'm not shooting those emotions at them.
Your seat never betrays you.
Yeah. So cool. Let's wrap this up. Why don't you plug yourself? Where are you going? What are you doing? Well,
I'm headed off to up near Rigby, Idaho at Wind River Arena up there. We're going to be doing the Teton Valley Horse Experience. It's a big horseman's gala and celebration of the horse. Really, it's an expo, and there's going to be a lot of good information there. And then from there, I've got a big colt starting clinic there that following week, and then we're making our way back to Ocala, Florida. But anybody that wants to keep up with me, I don't have a fancy website. I don't really believe in a lot of advertising. I believe in just being as real as we can. And for me, social media is kind of a direct line. If anybody ever wants to reach out, ask any questions or anything, you can get me. Just look my name up on there.
What is your name again?
Cliff Schadt Jr.
Spell that last name?
Schadt.
The junior part actually So your dad
I have to because my dad is a senior, so people are friending him all the time.
And for a long time, I thought I was cracking jokes with you. And it was your dad.
He don't care.
No, he doesn't care, but he's got a good enough sense of humor that he was just like, yeah, whatever.
Well, he's a lot like your dad. They're both musicians. They both kind of see the world through a different set of glasses.
Crazy old guys.
Pretty neat guys.
But no, so thanks a bunch for.
Hey, man, thanks for having me out.
Yeah, you bet.
Been good to see you and the family.
All right, on 3, we moon the camera. 1, 2, 3.